I've always loved the woods, the silence, the fresh air, the opportunity to be alone with my thoughts. So when my friends suggested spending a weekend in the forest, I immediately agreed. We gathered early in the morning, took tents, food, and set off. The forest greeted us with a friendly welcome. We found a great place to camp, not far from the lake. We set up the tents, made a fire. The day passed quickly. We walked through the forest, picked berries, enjoyed the nature. In the evening, we sat by the fire, talked, and joked. At night, I woke up from a strange sound. I opened my eyes and listened. The sound was quiet but distinct. It sounded like someone was walking around the camp. I got up and looked out of the tent. The forest was dark. Only a campfire illuminated a small part of the clearing. The footsteps had died down. I thought it was probably an animal and went back to sleep. The next day, I told my friends about the sounds. They took it calmly, thinking it was just a forest animal. We continued to rest, enjoying nature, but I could not get rid of the feeling that someone was watching us. In the evening, I heard footsteps again. This time they were closer. I looked out of the tent again, but saw nothing. I decided that I needed to look around. I took a flashlight and went into the forest. The footsteps became quieter, then stopped. The feeling that someone was watching did not leave me. I returned to the camp and went back to sleep. In the morning, I found that several things had disappeared. A flashlight and a knife were missing. I told my friends, and they thought maybe we'd just forgotten them somewhere. But I knew I'd put them in the tent. Decided to be more careful and not leave things unattended. On the third day, as we were preparing lunch, I heard footsteps again. This time the sound was distinct. Told my friends to check the woods. We split up and went in different directions. I went deeper into the thicket, listening to every rustle. Suddenly, I saw a figure between the trees. It was a man. He looked at me, then quickly disappeared into the forest. My heart beat harder. I called my friends and told them what I had seen. We decided we should pack up and leave. But when we returned to the camp, we found that the tents had been torn up and things scattered. There were footprints around the camp, clearly left by a person. We realized that someone was following us. We decided not to panic and try to get to the car. We gathered the rest of our belongings and headed for the road. The forest began to seem hostile. Every rustle made us wary. Several hours passed, but we never reached the car. We got lost. We decided to camp for the night and continue our way in the morning. In the night, I heard footsteps again. This time they were very close. I took a flashlight and went out of the tent. In the darkness, I saw the figure again. It stood motionless, watching us. Woke up my friends. We decided not to stay put. We packed up the camp and continued walking. We walked all night, but it seemed that the forest was endless. The footsteps behind us did not stop. We realized that someone was leading us in a circle on purpose. In the morning, we came to a small clearing. We decided to rest and discuss a plan of action. The footsteps subsided, but the feeling that we were being followed did not leave us. We decided to split up and look for a way out. I went in the direction where I thought there was a road. I walked for hours, listening carefully to every sound. There was silence all around, broken only by the rustling of leaves. Finally, I saw a path. I rejoiced, thinking it was a path to salvation. I quickly followed the path, hoping it would lead to a road. Suddenly, I heard branches crunching behind me. When he turned around, He saw a figure between the trees. My heart beat faster again. I quickened my step without turning around. The figure followed me, but did not approach. It seemed as if someone was deliberately keeping his distance, playing with me. On the path, I saw scattered things that clearly belonged to my friends. So they were here too. But why weren't they waiting for me? I noticed footprints leading further into the forest. I decided to follow them, hoping to find my companions. After a while, I came to another clearing. Here, the tracks broke off. I looked around and saw that the clearing was surrounded by a dense wall of trees. It seemed to be a dead end. But suddenly, I heard a whisper. It was coming from somewhere in the trees. I came closer and saw a small shelter made of branches and leaves. Inside sat my friends. They looked exhausted and scared. When I approached, they told me that they too had heard footsteps and seen a figure. They decided to take shelter here so that they would not be discovered. We were discussing what to do next when we heard footsteps again. This time they were quite close. The figure appeared at the edge of the clearing and slowly moved toward us. Our hearts clenched. We didn't know what to do. We decided that we should try to get as far away from this place as possible. We gathered the rest of our belongings and walked deep into the forest. The figure followed us. We were no longer thinking about saving ourselves. We just wanted to get as far away from the stalker as possible. Night found us in the forest again. We decided to stop and rest. We made a small fire to keep warm and scare away the animals. In the night, we heard footsteps again. Now they were all around us. It seemed like someone was playing with us, scaring us, and making us wander in the dark. We stayed up all night, waiting for an attack. In the morning, we decided that we should try to get out on the road. We walked in the direction where we thought there was civilization. We walked all day, but the forest did not end. Footsteps haunted us, giving us no rest. Suddenly, we saw an old abandoned house. We decided that it could be our shelter. We walked closer and saw that the house was in a terrible state, but still we decided to enter. It was dark and damp inside, but we hoped we could spend the night here. We settled down in one of the rooms, locked the door, and put up barricades. During the night, we heard footsteps again. Now they were inside the house. It seemed as if someone was walking down the hallways, approaching our room. Our hearts were pounding, each of us holding something heavy in our hands, ready to defend ourselves. The footsteps stopped at the door. We clenched our eyes shut, holding our breath. The door slowly began to open despite the barricade. In the light of the flashlight, a figure appeared on the threshold. It was a man, but his face was hidden by shadows. He stood looking at us without moving. We didn't know what to do. Suddenly, the man spoke. His voice was quiet and cold. He said that we had disturbed his peace and should leave. We were stunned, but realized it was best not to argue. We gathered our things and ran out of the house, heading deep into the woods. We walked all night until we finally saw a light. It was a road. We were saved. We got on the road and walked towards the nearest settlement. When we looked back, we saw that the figure was no longer following us. When we finally reached the people, we couldn't believe the nightmare was over. It was several months before we were back to normal. The forest was no longer a place of solitude and tranquility for us. It had become a symbol of fear and the unknown, a reminder that even in the quietest places, danger could lurk. But sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, I still hear those footsteps. And then I realize that this horror will stay with me forever